Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Larry. This is Doc. I am so honored to bring this presentation to you. This is an interview by me and Gustavo Arrellano, joined by my partner Arturo. We talk a lot about history, hidden history that's hidden from us, people not being acknowledged, and a lot of, racial undertones and overtones. I wanted to take this point of conversation right at the start, because there is this thing about hidden history. Because when it comes to the civil rights movement and all these other revolutions, you only hear about a few people. And in this, we go in depth on such things as war, as colonialism, as erasure, but also we talk about intercultural exchange. And we have three people who come from backgrounds and who are all children of immigrants who all come from different countries. And I defer to my partner Arturo, whose screen name is American Numbers. And if you're from Latin America, if you know, you know. But I just thought it would be poignant to start off this show with one of the readings from Larry Leon, the guy who led the Delano grape strikes. He said, "I feel we are just as good as any of them. I feel we have the same rights as any of them. Because in that Constitution, it said that everybody has equal rights and justice." And yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. This is coming out on Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. This is a shout out to two guys who don't ever get the credit during the civil rights movement because it was taken from them, because it wasn't convenient for the American public. But I do want to thank and dedicate this episode to Larry Leon, Philip Veracruz, and Dolores Huerta. Without you, so many other unions, so many other workers, so many other marginalized people who are just seen as disposable, wouldn't have the rights that we enjoy now because of you guys. And, what more can I say? Viva la raza. And please enjoy this conversation with columnist from the Los Angeles Times, Pulitzer Prize winning team member, Gustavo Arellano of Orange County. Thank you and enjoy. This is Lariat. I am here with my partner Arturo. We are both honored here because we are joined by uh, Gustavo Arellano, a columnist for the LA Times, twice nominated finalist for the Pulitzer Prize, and he was part of a Pulitzer Prize winning team. Welcome to the show, Gustavo. Big, big, big respect to you. Mucho respeto para ti, porque yo, I am so like honored to have somebody here that I respect, someone that I've read, someone that I also believe that journalists are still the last bastion of truth out there. Well, they should be, anyways. And you're one of those guys who I absolutely trust when I read your things because your columns are awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Thank you for knowing who I am. Thank you for all the kind words.
Yeah, man. Typically this is a pro wrestling podcast, but I don't keep
Where's my
it.
cousin when I need him? I'm gonna be honest. I stopped watching like 25 years ago, but of course I know the names, and it's not because I thought, oh, it sucks or anything like that. I just became a reporter, like, and that's a trip. And I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to mention this. It's like basically 25 years ago, I stopped my entire life to become a reporter, and and it's a trip because I'm a huge sports guy, huge sports guy. And then like right now the hockey playoffs is going, and then I'm like seeing some guys who are in the Hall of Fame. I'm like, they had a career in the past 20 years. Like that strip. Like I'm still stuck in. So I'm still stuck with freaking. Uh, my favorite all-time WWE moment was Stone Cold making Kurt Angle wear a little Stetson hat. That's where I'm at. And that's like long time ago. I know. So my cousin Vic, who's going to be listening to that, he knows all the ECW, all of that stuff. But so it's an honor to at least be part of that right now.
Hey, man. We don't. Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
We'll edit that out. I never care about if you're watching or not. I always have this opinion of people who watched wrestling, and if you watch wrestling, you were a fan of wrestling at the time. So when you first got into pro wrestling, way back when, what was the allure of pro wrestling?
Oh, it was the glory days. I mean, Mean Gene Okerlund back then. So I'm dating myself, of course. Jesse the Body Ventura, Bobby Heenan, Mouth of the South, Roddy Piper, Andre the Giant. I mean, you had these icons, all of them colorful, all of them with storylines, and I remember because they would air them Saturday morning at 11 o'clock on Channel 11. So
Yeah.
you see your morning cartoons. You're still not having to go out with your family just yet. So you have a couple of hours and you would just see all of them. And then we had a friend, of course, who had the black box. So that's how we would see all the pay-per-view stuff, the Survivor Series.
Oh, I had the black box. I had the black box too.
Yeah, you had to.
Black
Black box gang here. We also had the black box. My dad was a cable man back in the day. So
Oh, that's amazing. So you had the cousin, you had someone. In our case, it was the friend who had the black box. And then, that's also I'm not going to pretend and say like, oh, we Mexicans, we love lucha libre first. No, it came both for us because what you would do, we're in Southern California. So you watch Channel 11 and then like Saturday afternoons on Galavisión, Channel 22. Yeah, you know it.
Yeah.
So you had the lucha libre matches. So you just loved, and what we really were, especially as Mexicans, we were boxing fans. So we loved a fight. We loved to see people doing great moves. And so for us, wrestling was just like the more acrobatic version of boxing. And we grew up with that stuff. We I'm just rattling off, at least from that generation, Earthquake and Tugboat, of course, Typhoon, Mr. Fuji, Hakeem, the African Dream, all of that stuff. And then once it starts getting into the Attitude era, like you're like, because a lot of that stuff, it was funny, but there was a kind of a wholesomeness to it. They weren't such, in Spanish, that the term would be sangron, like they weren't so mean.
Yeah.
But then Attitude comes around, and they're meaner, but you're like, oh man, they're really funny. Like their lines and everything that they said. So it was great. It was all, and look, a lot of these people, and now of course with nostalgia coming in, they're icons. Like and then some of the folks, of course, merged into the mainstream. So not just Hulk Hogan, but like Macho Man. Like everyone knows his sayings. Everyone knows to snap into a Slim Jim and all of that stuff. So it's just
I think
iconic all around.
it's funny with Macho.
there's something about talking to the macho man really savage because
well,
everybody has an impression of the macho man. Yeah.
I was gonna say one thing people don't know, like modern fans don't know, but Macho Man was like an S tier Late Show guest. Like they would like he would go like the Late Show hosts loved to have Macho Man on because Macho Man was like just an incredible like Arsenio Hall loved to have him on because Macho was always incredible. He would always tell stories. He's so good off the cuff.
Yeah.
Like in any room he would go in and everyone would be like, "Fuck, that's Macho Man."
Yeah, no, these were characters. I mean, Iron Sheik, may he rest in peace. After wrestling, he became his own person just because he was always angry and just the insults were just through the roof. And so I've always loved wrestling for that. I wish I had, and it's funny because I'll see, I'm trying to remember, just like, I'll just randomly come into whether it's wrestling or just different things in my life, and they just happen to be different parts. So probably the last time I saw WWE, and I can't remember this. I can't remember who the wrestler was, but Shaq was part of it, and the wrestler made an insult of Shaq mentioning Kobe, and the whole audience got all crazy. And then Shaq comes and suplexes him and all of that. But just seeing that, I'm like, okay, whoever's doing this, whoever's writing this, like they know what's going on. God bless it that it's still brilliant. I don't have to tune in to see sometimes you'll have to see the Colbert Show just got canceled. So now it's like, okay, I didn't see it in a while, but I got to check it out because it's probably going to die. Well, it's going to die. I don't feel like I have to do that historically, at least with WWE or all these other outfits,
Yeah, because you can just jump in and out of wrestling whenever you want to. What's pretty interesting to me as Angelino, as a SoCal person, is right now in pro wrestling there is a big surge in the popularity and people coming out as lucha libre fans. And one of the things is I wanted to ask you because you're an Angelino, you watch Channel 22. Lucha libre is still it's big around here. You see little shows in any swap meet out here. You go to any kind of a place where it's a marketplace, at the beach. You could go you could go around Little Tokyo. You could go to San Diego, and you will find people selling lucha libre masks. And I just wanted to ask you, as a fellow Angelino SoCal person, what is the relationship in the culture and the response to the culture of lucha libre and the Mexican American Southern California sort of culture? Because I feel like it's really part of it. And when we see things like the World Baseball Classic and Team Mexico, they wear the mask when they get the home run. I always see that oh, that's a universal sign of pro wrestling, but also of Mexico. And I think that's really great in the current in the current world. There's this boost of lucha libre popularity. But being from Southern California, I've always seen it around me.
Oh yeah, no, well, okay. Thank you for calling me an Angelino, but I'm actually an Orange County guy, born and raised, lifelong. I know. Hey, you know what? We're cool. Anaheim. Well, but this ties into lucha libre. So the Anaheim indoor swap meet, they used to have indoor lucha libre all the time. That was actually one of the first stories I ever did as a journalist. Period. Was about the lucha libre matches at the Anaheim indoor swap meet. And I mean, how much things change and how much they remain the same, right? With lucha libre, they're the one white guy, of course, had to be the anti-immigrant guy, and he would march in the ring all the time and say, after I beat this wetback, I'm gonna deport all you beaners back to Mexico. And the crowd loved it, of course. They would be throwing stuff, and the guy loved bring it on. And so what has happened is just what's happened with Latino migration, period. The continued Latinization of the United States. Why is it that Bad Bunny is the biggest freaking star in the world? How is it that he starred in the Super Bowl halftime show? Because of his Latinidad and being proud of it. So lucha libre, same thing with Mexican food. Of course, I've written so much about Mexican food, but specifically for lucha libre, you had two things. I mean, obviously, wrestling fans, they always knew about lucha libre, and the wrestlers themselves, of course, they knew who the famous luchadores were on the border in Mexico and all that. Then you start seeing like spillover with the Guerrero family, Rey Misterioso, and New Latin Order, all that stuff, and they're popular among American wrestling fans. So they start seeing, like this mask, like they love the acrobatic style, all of that. Most importantly, though, I would argue Nacho Libre. Nacho Libre mainstreamed lucha libre and the masks for Americans, kind of like Coco for Dia de los Muertos. And Americans talk all this crap on Mexicans, but they're always intrigued by what we do. So when they know they're classic wrestlers, and then you have these like high flying acrobatic folks who are wearing masks, they're like, oh, that's cool. Like we have our own style, but like that's really cool as well. So it makes me happy to see like little kids for not Christmas, for Halloween or whatever, they just have a wrestling mat. That's just like their thing. You go to San Diego, there's a famous taqueria called Lucha Libre Taqueria, and it's pretty good, but it's more famous because there's all these, all this Lucha Libre iconography and all of that. So I think it's a beautiful thing, and I think it's part of a long time trend of the United States becoming more Latino, becoming more comfortable in a way with its Latinidad. And I know it's an easy thing to say just with culture, but look, they could easily hate everything that we do. And there was a point in this nation's history where they did hate almost everything and anything Latino.
Yeah, I mean, I think that cycles up and down. I mean, because like historically, they like us, they don't like us. But I do think that I mean, like it becomes more comfortable with the culture, and it becomes a thing where it gets more popular. It becomes kind of a print. And I think lucha is going back to like it's something. It's an export that kind of typifies the culture. And I say that because I mean, like as being Puerto Rico, you see the Santo movies, you see like the luchadors kind of getting exported out. And we'd actually get the comic books, the Spanish little Spanish comic books with like El Santo, and like we get that and like Calimán and like from like other like places, and people who don't know who aren't Mexican like will know about Calimán and Hombres, and it's a whole kind of very interesting kind of subset of the culture, and kind of like typifies kind of what comes out. It's a very interesting way to do that, and I to me it's great. And one of the things we kind of highlight is how it's become a bit of a cultural thing now, like with people going to Arena Mexico in Mexico, and you'll see these huge stars coming out because it is such a kind of cultural kind of event. Like the crowds are hot, the people are into it, there's all this pageantry and all this tradition. And I mean, it's a great show too, but like it's become a thing where like it kind of typifies the pride. And it is kind of interesting as like Mexico is kind of like having a bit of a renaissance like in the last kind of 10, 15 years. And you can start seeing how that kind of plays out and how that kind of becomes more interesting. It has become kind of a whole thing, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it is very, it's also very colorful, very impactful, and very kind of like cool. We're doing a thing where,
No, I was about to say, no, you're right. It intrigues Americans, and you're talking about like how stars are coming in and checking that out. It's like the same thing with Mexican baseball. Seeing a Mexican baseball league game is different from major leagues. And you've seen though, and same thing like within Japan, South Korea, and you see now Major League Baseball incorporating some of the stuff, like Larry said, like the ceremonies after you hit a home run, and people are like acting out this stuff, more of the pageantry, more of the idea like it's okay to be having fun while you're trying to win. Like especially with baseball, like you have to be so serious about these things. Now it's like loosening up, and I think that's a good thing,
Yeah, obviously, and I do feel that way. Because like when we think about because Arturo brought up like mainstream stars like Olivia Rodrigo, Bad Bunny, most recently BTS going to the Lucha Libre show, and the Mystical took like advantage of that, went viral for that weekend, and I find that very, very interesting. Another thing that went viral was, of course, this man who called Del Taco the original taco stand.
Oh God.
And like you were kind of teasing him, and like there's this whole thing, but let's stop talking, man. Like you cannot
talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Like, because Of course, I'm from, I'm not gonna dox myself, but like I often frequent places in the San Gabriel Valley. So like I'm big on Alfredo's here, especially the one on Baldwin Park. I've been going there since high school. Oh no, since not high school. Damn, like since probably like since I was a kid,
Yeah.
and I love I love street tacos. My favorite kind of tacos are I like buchecha. I love tripas. I love cabeza. Cabeza is probably my favorite kind of taco.
You go for
And
it.
but like we were having this discussion about what is the iconic taco, and I'm gonna say it. For $15, you can get 53 tacos at Jack in the Box. And those Jack in the Box tacos, you want to talk like biting into nostalgia and entering entering that dimension from Ratatouille. You take a bite of that Del Taco taco and it brings you back to when you didn't give a crap about anything and we're just like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna sit here and eat like 50 tacos and not think about life. But because you're known for talking about tacos, man, and I would love to get that taco discussion with you.
Yeah,
Like,
look, I wrote a book about the first book about the history of Mexican food in the United States, Taco USA: How Mexican Food Conquered America. It came out in 2012. Del Taco, I go regularly for their half pound bean and cheese burrito. Nothing else. Their churro, I think, like those cheesecake bites that they do, those are not bad, but I can only eat so many. I don't really care for fried food, just period. The tacos, their tacos themselves, the hard shell tacos, never cared for them. But the bean and cheese burrito is almost as perfect as that Jack in the Box taco. I don't go to Jack. I don't go to Jack in the Box though that much for the tacos because I'm still mad at them because I remember when they were 3 for $1, and now what? Are they 2 for $1 at least still? I hope so. But
I think so, maybe
they
like for the regular size tacos, not the mini tacos.
The regular ones, not the big ones. No. But like that's like I got so mad when because that used to be my meal when I used to work at it was a data company, so I would just type up reports. This is like late 90s or no, late 90s. And that would be my lunch. 3 tacos for $1. And it was so perfect, except instead of the brown sauce that they have, I'd get tapatio and put it on there. And then when they raised it 2 for $1, I'm like, come on, like really? You could raise everything else, but this is freaking genius.
Yeah, I could just, just the same, just go to any taqueria over here and get like get like a plate of like 4 tacos for like $5 with frijoles and arroz and just be like happy. I could just go like I could literally walk down the block and there's the birria truck right there and I'll just be happy to eat that. But American tacos are different. I'm gonna give them a little bit of respect. I'm not a hard shell taco guy. I know LeBron has those taco nights where he eats with the with the taco shell, and respect to that. But I've never been a hard shell person. I'm always like, oh, this is controversial. I'm a flour tortilla guy. I do like corn tortillas, but I am a flour tortilla guy.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I also
expect the heat now.
Well, no, my experience was like when I was living in New Mexico. It's like everything was like, oh God, we love the all the breakfast tortillas. Everything was like breakfast burritos, breakfast tortillas, and like I'm a chili verde guy, by the way. Like, like the joke in New Mexico is the state question is red or green, and I'm a green guy. Just give me that green. I love that. Like I always find like it's a little bit more spicy and a little more earthy. So I like always like that a little bit more. And yeah, like I mean, like and like I'm watering because like I'm like you. I'm like not a hard shell guy. I like the soft kind of like tortilla. Like I want to like feel that. And I was kind of like I remember like this is the core memory for me is like I was in Rome, right? I was visiting Rome, and there was a soccer field in Rome, right? And like it was like a bunch of people probably pick a ball. And there are Mexicans there, like there are a bunch, and I knew they were Mexican because I wanted to talk to them. And they were basically making carnitas, like they're making carnitas, and they had the flour tortillas, and like they're giving out the meal to everybody who's playing. So like I played some ball with them and had like some nice, like tacos and burritos out like in Italy and Rome. Like
the only weird thing for the Italians would have been the tortillas. I mean, carnitas, basically porchetta, just chop the porchetta. They love their pork there. That's cool.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like that was always. I always felt like that, and every time I would go and pick up soccer anywhere, like there's always going to be like somehow there's always going to be tacos and tortillas. And that's just how the way it's a cool game.
Yeah, man. I love roast pork. I'm a lechon guy. I told Arturo like when I go to Puerto Rico, he has to take me to Lechon Road.
Lechon Road,
like,
yes, Lechon Road.
we have to go there because I know like there's the Filipino style, there's the Puerto Rican style.
Yeah.
And like the roast pork with the crispy skin. Oh man, like.
So if people aren't familiar, I think it's Andrew Zimmerman does this one where like he goes up there's a road in Puerto Rico in the center of the island on the mountain where literally you drive up and it's all lechoneras on both sides. So you're driving up it's about like 40 minutes out of the capital. You drive out and like you do the thing, like you do it around Christmas and you go and you hit all the little like lechoneras and you like, get some fritters on this one and get some pork on this one. And then you try like as you get up the mountain, you pick one where you're going to stop, you're going to eat and go to the food coma and then drive down. Right. And that's kind of the way you gotta do that. And obviously you're having like the drinks and you were the family. Like I did that last Christmas with my folks and with my family. My family, I rented out this big bus and it was like literally like all the cousins and all the kind of people flew in from the States. Like it was like 100 of us. Like
my God.
Like, los primos.
Drink your coquito.
Hey, mojito, coquito, and we get to the last place and we start ordering the big ass platters of food, and we got all the younger cousins who were like going to college, so they're like grabbing these big huge plates of pork. And but that is a very Latino kind of experience of get all the family together, and we're gonna drive and hit all the eateries and get all the typical food. It's great.
Yeah. As a Filipino, I also say that's the Filipino experience also, but we're kind of the Latinos of Asia, pretty much. I did want to say this because you wrote the book on Mexican food, and Mexican food's having a really big moment, especially with the moles. Moles are blowing up everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I also love that Filipino food is having a moment here with places like La Mesa, with those brothers there, places, and I absolutely love the representation in food here in SoCal. You could go to a Filipino restaurant, you can go to a Mexican restaurant, you can go to an Indian restaurant, Mediterranean. There's even Jamaican restaurants out here that are pretty darn good, and I just love having the variety. But personally, seeing the representation in Filipino food right now in the media, and I know you're not a food critic.
I was a food critic for 17 years.
Yeah. You were, but now you're not. But I just wanted to ask you, do you have any Filipino food places that you frequent normally, or is that something that you haven't tried? Because you said you're not a big on fried food, but I got to take you someplace, man.
Yeah, well, you want me to just eat nothing but crispy pata, basically. Look, I was
crispy pata and lumpia. I got you.
Oh yeah, no lumpia. I like lumpia. Lumpia is not too fried. I'm talking about deep fried. So crispy pata.
Deep fried crispy pata, man.
What the hell's going on? It's like chicharron. I could only eat or fried chicken. I could only eat so much of it before I'm it's just too rich for me. No, look, I was a food critic for 17 years for OC Weekly. We were the only newspaper that regularly covered Filipino cuisine because Orange County has a lot of Filipinos.
Yeah.
There's Filipino Express in Buena Park, little what do you call turo spots?
Point. Yeah,
turo. Point exactly. Kapit Bahay in Anaheim, that's still good. There was a great place in La Palma. It's not there anymore, but it was called Ellen's Pinoy Grill. That was a really in the city of La Palma, not La Palma Avenue. It's a small little place. Ryan Garlitos, he used to have a high-end Filipino restaurant. He is now the chef at not Heritage Barbecue, but oh my God, what's it called? Le Hut Dinette, yes. Le Hut Dinette in Santana. So Ryan is putting Filipino influences to just diner food. He had a collaboration.
Also, shout out to Heritage Barbecue and oh my God, it's always good there. Shout out to you guys at Heritage Barbecue.
Yeah, and by the way, his number 2, so Ryan runs Le Hut, but his chef de cuisine, Danny my God, why am I forgetting it? Oh, I'm mixed. There's too many Dannys in my mind right now. But Danny from Heritage, his number 2 is a Filipino guy whose name escapes me right now as well. But like, no, Filipino food. I once got in trouble for this. I once said Filipino food's the most underrated food in Southern California. And a Filipina professor from USC, I'm not going to name her, but she got mad. Like, what do you mean it's underrated? Everyone knows what Filipino food is. I'm like, no, they don't. No, they don't at all. It's been having a moment. You're like, and she basically, she thinks everyone in Southern California is Catholic when that's not the case. Yeah, if you go to a church, I went to St. Boniface in Anaheim. They have a Tagalog mass because there's like every week. And I like my sisters. They went to school at St. Boniface, and half of their classmates are Filipinas because that's just how it is. So the more and of course Filipinos have the greatest dessert of all time, halo halo. Like, the more Filipino food there could be out there in the world, the better off we'll be.
I'm gonna say this one statement.
I'm gonna argue for quesitos, but okay, you can keep going. Yeah, I mean,
I'm just gonna say this one thing to Jollibee. Bring back the halo halo. That's one of the big things that people have gone for, and it's been like 3 years since we last had halo halo here in Southern California from Jollibee.
Yeah.
So you guys bring it back, and I shout out to Jollibee. We're not sponsored, but we will take a sponsorship. But I'm
and it's Danny Castillo from Heritage. Now I'm remembering the name. Danny Castillo from Heritage.
I also wanted to just like say like again like thank you for coming on here, and I absolutely there's this thing about what we have here with the 3 people with possibly 2 people with a Latino surname, 1 guy with a Latino first name. Well, we sort of have this in common of being from lands that were all conquered by the Spaniards. So we all come from places with, this where Catholicism is the majority, where this is thing. And I think that there's also, when you're talking about that Filipino professor who was talking about, everybody knows Filipino. No, not everybody knows Filipino. When I was a kid, about like maybe 10. I went from a place that's a Filipino enclave, that's an Asian enclave, a Latino enclave, like all my neighbors were brown, to moving to Rancho Cucamonga, where luckily my neighbor was also Filipino, but everybody else around us was white. And me, my brother, and my neighbors, we were the only Filipino kids in the school for at least a year until Mexican people started moving in, and then like we grew. And my experience doing that, going to like a mostly white school where they treated me like I didn't know English, and they had left voicemails for my parents in Spanish because of my surname. It got to the point where I was in ESL classes, right? And I was like, I was like, okay, I guess. And then the other kids in the ESL classes also spoke English. So that's how I was able to meet the other minority kids in the school, was all of us got put in ESL, and it was just that we were shy. Shy Asian kids, shy like South Asian kids, shy like Mexican kids who were just like, this is all weird. We're just surrounded by white kids now. And it got to the point where my mom went to the office and said, do I look like I don't speak English? And, she's Filipino. English is the national language of the Philippines. Yeah, people, the national language of the Philippines is English. Just wanted to say that. And, because they also, we have the thing of the Americans sort of like colonizing us in 1899, the Filipino-American War, which is something you guys should read up on, because I know I didn't read up on that when I was in history class.
I mean, it's a little bit broad. It's a Spanish-American War, but yes, keep going.
Yeah. No, but then after that was a whole other war, and no one knows about that except Filipinos. And like Larry was saying, even Filipino-Americans don't know about it. And even though it was a very, very brutal conquering of the Philippines.
Yeah. It happened. It happened in the Philippines. It also happened in Cuba.
Yeah.
And Puerto Rico. We were talking about this beforehand. Puerto Rico had very notable independence movements that actually led to results, right? So, a lot of that. People don't know that, it seems like, oh, yes, we got there and they welcome. Well, not really. Things are a little bit more complicated than that. History is never quite that clean, guys.
Never.
Because America was able to attain Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines all around that same time period. So that's kind of like how I sort of like me and me and Arturo like kind of opened that dialogue from when I did my first podcast, because we've been friends for a while, but that was like the first time like we got to know each other really, and we just have this deep interest in both of our country. Well, my country is the United States of America, but like my parents' home country, the Philippines. Like I just have a deep interest in that. Like post like when I went to college, I did like a minor in Asian American studies, and that's where you really learn the history of the world is in college, and you get to learn all this kind of
It
stuff
is,
that happened, such as this.
and I'm gonna get a little bit like by like let's take it a little bit more highbrow. One of the really funny things that happens in Puerto Rico is we get our education in Spanish, right? Or a lot of our education, particularly in history, comes in Spanish. So the textbooks that we're getting, I'll make an example. Like one of the core things that we read in Puerto Rico is Bartolomé de las Casas, right? And if you're familiar with Bartolomé de las Casas, who talks about like the Spanish colonization and how they basically they did a genocide on all the Indians, and how it's kind of explained how that kind of worked and the whole process. It's very different than what would be the standard curriculum in the States, right? And the other part of the thing that happened in PR is we get like the AP, we get like the Spanish AP and the US AP in the papers, right? So what I mean by that is we get the Latin American press plus the US press. So when you're kind of getting to take on the story, something that was covered a very particular way in Puerto Rico will be covered very differently in the United States, right? And so like we get this very different view of kind of certain events because we're getting like multiple viewpoints, right? And you're getting this viewpoint about, like I said, like history is rarely as clean as it's explained, and you're getting like, oh, what happened here? It's like, oh yes, the Indians welcome you for Thanksgiving, and you're like, well, it wasn't quite that simple, guys.
It's Latin America also. There's God knows how many countries, 30 some countries, most of them small, some bigger ones. And so because you are from Latin America, you care about an entire region. The United States, God bless it, but all we care about is ourselves. That's all we care about. We think in the entire hemisphere, all that matters in this hemisphere is us, not Canada, maybe Mexico, but but go ahead.
I was gonna say my username online is American Numbers, has always been American Numbers, and the reason it's ironically American Numbers because I'm Puerto Rican, obviously, and like the other part is like I used to joke, it's like I'll do the thing where I say, hey, who's the most famous athlete from the most famous American athlete? Lionel Messi, of course, right? Messi, of course. Speaking about Argentina, but yeah, I mean, like the funny part, it's to say, like I would say, like imagine if the Germans called themselves European and like didn't call anybody else European, like everybody else in Europe kind of offended, and it is kind of a very kind of like insular way to view the world, and so like I mean, I think it's cool that like cultures outside of the U.S. per se are kind of like having this higher visibility because it does kind of like hopefully break a little bit of that insularity. Like, the rest of the continent kind of exists, right?
Yeah, hello.
Yeah.
Wake up. Yeah. We're here. They're here. A bunch of us are here, not just you folks.
It's like,
yeah. When because people got so mad and so confused about Bad Bunny having "God Bless America" and having all the countries in North and South America all like just represented in that performance, and they're like, "What does he mean?" And like,
well, because talking about America as a whole, I mean, I think like that was a really funny kind of moment for me because one of the things like. Bad Bunny, like if you people don't know in the States, but Bad Bunny basically funded the independence movement's political campaign in the last gubernatorial election in Puerto Rico out of his own pocket. Like literally, he was feuding with the state of governor. He was funding the kind of alliance for independence on the island. He was basically funding like commercials like out of pocket, and obviously it's been a thing where he's been, and it's in his album. He's been a lot more into the culture, if you look at the films he did around his album, it's all about how like you're losing Puerto Rican culture and how to protect the culture. And it's about like the coquí, the little coquí that he does, which is the native frog for the island. Like that's the symbol of the island, and how it's like the coquí is in the States and like being cold and like how he's calling home because he misses home. And it's the whole, if you watch the concerts, this whole thing about like losing the culture and kind of how to protect the culture of Puerto Rico. And the whole album is about like him doing like the different musical trends for the island and kind of like highlighting that music, the cuatro, the salsa, the different kind of movements. And it's been kind of a thing where like with him, where like people don't kind of get that he's been really into that and into things like, you know, he went to Chile and he was like doing Victor Yara. He was like singing Victor Yara songs. And if you know who Victor Yara is and you know what happened to Victor Yara and how that played out, and if you know who was responsible for what happened to Victor Yara, then you kind of like have to kind of like understand that, like, yeah, I mean, he's fallen into a lot more of the, I mean, this is a broader set of thoughts of like how intellectuals kind of like view the history of the hemisphere, right? So I think like one of the things people have to understand is like if you're coming at it from Latin America, you understand that the U.S. is basically following the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine is the U.S. kind of saying that this is our hemisphere, right? And we're going to control this hemisphere. We're going to control kind of what goes on, and we want governments that are kind of subservient, client states, essentially, right? Good or bad. I mean, like, and I think some of that is going on now, right? If you think about it, where like essentially what you're kind of looking for is like, hey, we don't want these European powers here, and we want kind of like, oh, everything's got to be like a friendly or a friendlier government to us, and that's really kind of the history of Latin America, very summarized for the last 150 years. I mean, obviously a lot more detail, but
more like 500 years.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, I'm going to Monroe Doctrine forward. And that's kind of, if you understand that, then you understand that that's kind of, you know, this is why the whole Greenland thing, as an example, is them kind of saying that they don't want they don't trust the Europeans to basically police the space around that, and they want to control that airspace. The same thing happened in Venezuela, where they just want to like have a government that is, they don't care the specifics, just that it's subservient or a client state where they can basically pick up the phone and tell them what to do. Right? That's kind of the whole.
That's always been the MO of the United States, and like I'm gonna bring it back to like their you know, they kind of got sold the Philippines from Spain directly.
Yeah. Well, but Larry, I don't know if I ever told you this joke. There was a joke that would float around in Puerto Rico that would say that, like, how do you know there's going to be an election in Latin America?
How?
Because the merchant marines are in Central. Like they're at the bars. Like the Marines are at the bar. Like the merchant marines are like hanging out at the bars when like there's an election in Latin America. And like I'm not gonna like we're not gonna get into the history of the CIA, but I mean that was like kind of like, oh hey, why are they in town? Oh okay.
You know, ask me about American installed dictators in foreign lands, and I'll talk to you about Ferdinand Marcos.
I was like,
my grandpa can tell you directly about Ferdinand. Well, no, my grandpa died, but he. But anyway, I, you know, I'll bring it back a little bit because, you know, Los Angeles, during the founding of Los Angeles, they found, and just California history, one of the names on there was a Filipino name. The first people to land on the West Coast were, you know, Filipino slaves that had jumped the galleon to see to see if the natives were friendly, and they got killed. Filipinos have always been a part of California, whether it be the Spanish trade, the galleons, because, you know, that's why there's a lot of there's this partnership and this kinship between Mexicans and Filipinos that goes back that 500 years because of the galleons. There's even like sister ports in Philippines and in Mexico where the Mexican flag and the Filipino flag fly side by side. I've always felt this sort of like kinship with these guys who I would go and have communion with at church, and like when I think about it too, because California was Mexico before it was part of the United States, and there's always sort of like in the mainstream way in different kind of towns in California, depending on where you go, there's an othering of people of color who've been here. Like, I have friends who are like third, fourth generation Chinese American, fourth generation Mexican American, and this is something that just happened like probably like a couple of months ago. I never told the story here. We were like, this happened to me, and we were just like going to the grocery store, right? And then like we got rolled up on by a unmarked car, and they told me to present my ID.
Oh man.
And I was like, I'm American, but who are you? Because they're plainclothes, and I don't know, like, I know my rights, and these guys are not wearing any badges. They're not wearing anything. They're plainclothes, and they're asking like me, my father-in-law for our IDs. And California real IDs, you can't get that without being a citizen or having like some sort of like rights to be here. And it took them like an hour or 2 hours of talking, like, here's my ID. I don't know, I don't think you have the right to sell it, to like pull us and say like we're not citizens here. What about us doesn't look American?
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, for like the last 2 3 years, I've been paranoid about this exact kind of scenario happening. And Arturo's heard me talk about it. Like, I had one of my uncles went to lunch at In-N-Out, and
Overrated, by
he
the way.
overrated. In-N-Out's overrated, guys. Go to Tommy's Burgers. They had their 80th
Yeah.
anniversary. I love a chili burger. But so my uncle, he went out to lunch at In-N-Out with his coworkers. His wife told him to always have his passport in his purse, because I always say my uncle has a purse because he has like the satchel, right? And so like when they go there to In-N-Out, they do this whole thing. He pulls out his passport, whatever. My uncle's coworkers, they're also like, they're supposed to be here, but they only have their driver's license, and they say, here's our real ID. That wasn't good enough, and then they got arrested, and they got carted off with a bunch of other people, and it took them about I think a month or 2 months to get released, and I was just like,
I mean,
the,
to me,
it's
like,
rough.
I'm gonna say
Horrible
this, like,
what it
because
is.
this is actually kind of an existential issue, kind of in Puerto Rico, which I explain to people when I like talk to them, which is, when Puerto Rico was granted, Puerto Ricans were granted U.S. citizenship, right?
What was that?
Granted U.S. citizenship. Was it in the 20s?
1917, pretty much concurrently with the U.S. going into World War One.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So essentially, we were granted citizenship, so we would be eligible for the draft, effectively, right? Now, the timing is a little bit, but exactly what it is. And I think one of the things, and as people talk about birthright traditions and whatnot, and they say, oh, they can't take it away. Well, people are not familiar with the case law, because effectively, like, for Puerto Ricans and for Native Americans, that it was granted under statute, right? So it's not a constitutional right. It was granted under statute. So it is something that they could suspend. And if they basically, again, if through executive order or through some sort of legislation, they could suspend it because it's not effectively granted. And people are not really kind of aware of how the law is kind of set out. Whereas, like, it's a little bit trickier than people kind of give it rights for. And we have kind of precedent in the States for them just saying, hey, we're going to throw a bunch of people out. And Larry and I have talked about things like Operation Wetback, where they just decide, hey, we're going to throw a bunch of people who are citizens, we're going to declare them not citizens. So it's not something, people have to be really wary about this. It's the line I always use is like, look, there's a simple way to kind of solve this stuff, which is, hey, just pass a law, right? And or clarify it. And if you don't, then you're always going to be kind of like, you possibly be a victim of it. And again, it's like a real big issue for Puerto Ricans, because like if we ever were, at one point they were floating like trading us for Greenland, right? Like, and I personally wouldn't necessarily think it's a bad thing as a Puerto Rican if I got EU citizenship. But independent of that, I know that people would be really angry about that, because there's a lot of people who like fought in foreign wars or like been in the military. My grandfather was Army, right? And like my father-in-law as well. It's like, so there's people who fought for these rights, and so they have some expectations. So people get kind of mad about that. But like, I always kind of like say, hey, don't, particularly if you're Latino or like that, you shouldn't think that your rights are guaranteed, right? You shouldn't think that you could just like sit there and expect them, because the history doesn't really bear that out. Like, and I think as Latinos, we kind of need to be aware of that and kind of act in a way that like Latino Filipinos and like kind of, or anybody who's in like a minority population in the States needs to be kind of like cognizant of this stuff. and needs to be a little bit more kind of active about it, right? Like, hey, vote local, and like kind of like do what you need to do to get it so that you save it, right? Never take your rights, or like I think again, like as a child of immigrants, I think we were all a child of like immigrants, and my dad was a Peter Pan kid, which means like he was basically built left out of Cuba when he was like 12, and you kind of get this, you don't get that idea that these things and these protections and these conditions are your God-given right. You need to kind of make sure that you fight for this stuff and you're aware of how you could lose it. And I think again, I mean, like that's something particularly for Latinos that, yeah, you know, we want to kind of like keep harping, keep talking, and keep kind of like being noisy. So like people kind of are aware of the risk. It is kind of a weird, very weird thing like that happened. I mean, I understand it, what happened in like the last election cycle, because people vote with their pockets, right? Yeah. And I think that like that was kind of like the key issue for me is like I was explaining. A friend who was a Democratic actor, one of the person that goes and knocks on doors, and he was talking about like going in Pennsylvania, and like Latinos kind of like bouncing him at the door, and I was like, look, man, like, you know, the price of groceries, it's really simple. The price of groceries, you didn't change anything about kind of the way the immigration policy. And the first thing that you did was lie about sending people checks. So what did you think people were going to do? I mean, like that's kind of you can't. I mean, this isn't rocket science. There people looked at this with their pocketbook, right? And I think now they're kind of like, okay, you have to like look at the other things, right? But if you don't talk about them, then nobody's going to think about them, and they're just going to vote with their pocketbook, right? Sorry, I got into a bit of a political rant there, but
no, I love it. You're just spitting out truths. Everything you said is absolutely true. Like we and I think a lot of the big problems with our political scene, if you will, is that people don't know their history, and that's how it's always been. Like the powers that be want us to be simplistic. They want those easy ideas of who is a hero, who is not, what is good, what is bad, and really like. They never want you to think about the bad history when it's complex. They just want you to, oh, Hitler was evil. The first revolution is good. The Civil War was okay because it was just brother against brother. But any other revolution in this country is evil. Like it's simplistic stuff. Yeah. And I'm sorry, this world has never it's never been simplistic. And I think the more that we know about what's going on, like people say, like, oh, you know, ethnic studies is bad because it makes kids hate white people and like just be angry. I'm like, number one, like, no.
Yeah. It is kind of funny to me that like. But I mean, I talk about the difference between history in Puerto Rico and history in the States. And one of the things when we're talking about like the American Revolution is one of the things that's highlighted to me, or it was Somerset versus Stewart, which like when I
don't even know what that is.
So Somerset versus Stewart is this case in it's a judgment in the English court in 1772, and it's the case that basically is the groundbreaker for making slavery illegal under common law. Now, they'd already kind of legalized it, but like this was front page news in the United States because the United States had like a large dependent on the slavery industry. Yeah. So as the case, we went to the High Court in England, and they decided that it was a slave that escaped, and so he's arguing that once he escaped, he was free because under common law he's free, right? And effectively, what that meant was like, yeah, they were essentially the conclusion of this was that they were going to make slavery illegal in all British colonies, not just Britain, but all British colonies. And so that had again, it was front page news in the States. I believe that the landowner that was in the case, right, Charles Stewart, was from Boston, right? And so it was a whole huge thing where like the economic reasons, one of the reasons was like, you know, they talk about like the Tea Party. They're like, oh, no taxation without representation. But it wasn't just taxation. They were mad that England was making decisions about the American economy, including slavery, without them having representation, right? So it was effectively not just taxation, but regulation on slavery. That was the issue, right? Like if you go look at the papers in like 1769 in Boston, you know, like what's front page for the news? They were talking about the Somerset versus Stewart case. They were talking about like British overreach into kind of issues of the law, specifically around slavery, that they were believed were of the U.S. And then, like, you know, if you're doing a proper read of U.S. history, I mean, the entire first period of the Republic up to the Civil War is built around issues around slavery in the states that are like free and the states that are not, and the tension between that. That's the whole thing, and it's like, I mean, all the constitutional crises in the states up to the Civil War are built around slavery, right? So, like, if you do not know the history and you don't know that really that's kind of the key issue for the first 100 years of the American kind of like country, then you kind of like, oh no, it was like no states' rights. Like, yeah, states' rights to do what? It's like the whole thing with like the thing with the like, what is it? What did they want to do? What was the thing that they wanted the rights to do? Right? What was the thing they were mad about British, like the British courts stepping in? It was slavery, right? But again, like, this is something that we're taught outside the U.S. and we kind of know that, and it's like it's a matter of law, and you can say, hey, this, it was taxation, but taxation wasn't the only thing they were mad about, right? It was like any British overreach, and the biggest British overreach of the era, or from their point of view, was them stepping into, hey, if the slave escapes and he gets to like British territory, he's free, right? Like, so yeah, if you ran from like the Massachusetts colony to Canada, you were free, right? That was kind of a big problem for like slave owners.
I'm gonna say this. I'm sorry to just interrupt you, but I want to bring us back to a little bit of this to immigration story. All right. Yeah. So Puerto Ricans were given citizenship in 1917. Filipinos were given citizenship in 1940, but we were already being brought to the United States, to the Alaskan fish canneries, to the sugarcane fields in Hawaii, and to the farmlands in California, up to Seattle. There was a lot of migration. I'm gonna tell the story about like my grandpa and his cousin, his older cousin. So my grandpa on my dad's side, my tatang, that's for the Ilocanos out there. He had gotten on a boat with his older cousin. Believe like this is about 19, so he would have been like, so he would have been about like 1935. So he was traveling there like as a 13-year-old on a boat from the Philippines. And the story was him and my uncle were sold the story of Philippines, land of America, land of opportunity, milk and honey. And my grandpa, as a 13-year-old, was thrown right into the fields, and he hated it. So he went back to the Philippines about a year later. But my other great uncle, he stayed in America. So he would be in Santa Barbara. This is where we first got established here as a family. Other people had migrated from our hometown in the local SOAR to places like Hawaii or Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And around 1940, we were granted the citizenship. So some of my uncles had come over here. Back in I believe it was 1963, my mom's dad came to work at the Delano grape fields because he had friends there that were working and said, hey, you can make some good money over here. 2 years later, Larry Itliong, Philip Veracruz, started the Delano grape strike. And my grandpa, my mom's dad, was there in the front lines, with Larry, with Philip, with all the other Manongs out there. Manongs is the term, Ilocano term, because a lot of the people who got brought over to the U.S. were from the Ilocos region. Same region where, of course, dictator and president of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos, big friend of the United States, hailed from. And so anyway, during that grape strike, my grandpa, my lolo, he had experienced a lot of. Well, he talks about like he was there, and then when they go to like the town, he'd experienced a lot of hate, a lot of like anger, and a lot of like threats to his life, like get out of here, you know the words. And instead of staying for the whole fight, he said that it got so dangerous for him, he didn't feel good staying there because he didn't want to get his life in danger because he still had kids to take care of. So he went back to the Philippines. Um, my uncle, however, when he turned 18 in 1965, he joined the U.S. Navy. A veteran of the Vietnam War, still here. Uncle Carlos is still alive at 90 people. Awesome guy. And yeah, our history here with the United States is it's very interesting to me. And one of the big stories that came out, because we're talking about the United States controlling history, was of course Cesar Chavez being an abuser. An abuser of women, an abuser of children, and I believe Jackie Leong, who's the just go ahead and stop that.
We got some Puerto Rican going on.
Yeah, we got some Puerto Rican here. Also, like Larry Leong's son, Jackie Leong, he's been like on a couple like news shows. He's been like a couple of podcasts talking about how he saw he's not surprised about the abuse allegations. And it was only recently, like within like I'd say the last 10 years, where Philip Veracruz and Larry Leong were kind of given any sort of like acknowledgement for their contributions, not just to like the United Farm Workers, but in terms of civil rights. All right. So I'm going to go back even a little bit further to the Watsonville riots, where Filipinos...
That's a deep track, yeah.
Yeah, Filipinos were like kind of, lynching was still popular back then. And, it happened because they said, between the Filipinos stealing jobs and stealing white women, that was the whole fear. And that's always funny what the yellow peril is, man. The yellow peril is always about, or whenever there's fear about any sort of like minority group or people of color, is they're gonna steal all our women.
It's always these dudes are too cool. Like
it's always these guys have too much.
The Charlie Brown, the Charlie Brown thing is like, yeah, you're bitch too tough. You're too cool. You're swag too cool. Yeah.
I also believe that Charlie Brown was he had women, okay? He had the girl with the red hair. He has Marcy and Patty playing against each other. Charlie Brown is smooth with it. I'm gonna say that. But I like when you're talking about the control.
Reminded me of the Suit riots, because we were talking about the swag being too cool.
Yeah, the Zoot Suit riots with the Pachecos like getting beaten by like the Navy people.
Yeah.
And what are some of the biggest fans of pro wrestling at the Olympic Auditorium? Pachecos.
Yeah, Pachucos. Pachecos is the last name.
Yeah, Pachocos. Sorry, but the Pachocos who they go out on Saturday nights, wear the Zoot Suits, have a good time, and I think we've all watched American Me, where that opening scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, give me some chon chon. Anyway, I when we were talking about the control of like American history, I never learned any of this until I had taken the Asian American Studies course. I did not know who Larry Leong is, aside from like my mom telling me that my grandpa was actually here in America, but they kicked him out because he was scared. And it's cool that there's this middle school named for Larry Leong and Philip Veracruz. It's cool that you can go to the LA on that wall and you see like that on historic Filipino town, you see that mural with the Larry Leong like front and center of it, because he was not just like fighting for workers' rights, he was fighting for civil rights. For a long time, Filipinos were not allowed to marry the white women there, and their things were there. That was the only women in the area that they could like procreate with. So a lot of the relationships were seen as illegal. And to still be in America in 2026 and like still get looks like about like, that guy doesn't belong here, it disturbs me. Yeah. We've been in this country since the 1500s. Like, we were here before a lot of you. Like, you could see us in the 1700s in Louisiana. the shrimp dancers. There is this weird thing about how Filipinos are sort of like invisible in the mainstream, are invisible in this country, but we are like the second largest population of Asian Americans in this country. And also like it's pretty cool to see a little bit more representation in shows like The Pit that has like three Filipino characters in it, which you usually don't see like more than like a cameo of a Filipino person like in Scrubs, but in The Pit they have like two nurses who are running shit and one doctor. I love The Pit, by the way. If you're getting the HBO Max, you should get the HBO Max Hulu Disney Plus bundle, available for $30 a month. That's the HBO Max Hulu Disney Plus bundle. Anyway,
I
but
was gonna say that like the thing about that is I think one of the things that it's kind of proven that like part of that is um I think where the culture gets more insular and like people don't get to meet each other and like don't travel is when that kind of happens. And this is kind of like a lot of the shit's been when like you have things like you had the wars, right, and everyone kind of served on these units with people from like different places and got to meet them, or like they get to travel, or like when people go to college and get meet to like. And I think like part of that.
Arturo, I'm gonna pause you right there, and I'm gonna say this. Shout out to the Filipino mafia.
Nah.
Shout out.
There you go.
All of the service people know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like the whole thing being like, I think that like this is why I think getting back to like having things like lucha and like more different cultural elements, and even things like BTS, right? Like and like K-pop, and having these things come in and be popular and be things Bad Bunny and be things that people see and are exposed to does kind of help. I think kind of like it just helps people kind of move more people into the in group, right? There's a whole thing around like in group and out group and who you consider kind of like your people, right? And I think the more you're exposed and the more you have the experience of like, hey, this guy's cool, right? And he's cool with me and his friend, then that will help kind of like make things. And I think this is why I say, like I was saying, though, thing goes up and thing goes down. Because as people are exposed and people aren't exposed, then like, if you just live in a small town, you never travel anywhere, you never meet anybody who doesn't look like you, then you're going to be a lot more close to differences, right? And I think that's kind of sad because I mean, like, differences are kind of what makes stuff fun and exciting,
Yeah.
The saying in our well, thank you Joe Coy for this, but a lot of Asian Americans, we all say like rice is rice. And I don't know, you two brothers, you two my two Latino primos, I know you both eat rice, so rice is rice.
Well, there's brown rice, there's jasmine rice, there's tadig, there's arroz con
Basmati.
pollo, of course, the legendary, the national dish of the Americas. That and empanadas, I would say, is like that's what unites Latin America, because every single country has their version of arroz con pollo or a type of empanada, whether you call it pastelito, a salteña, whatever, whether it's sweet or savory or
Shout
whatever.
out to the arroz con pollo that they do in Puerto
Filipinos
Rico.
have empanadas too.
The one they do in the Caribbean, which is they do with orange juice and potatoes.
Wow.
Orange
Hey,
juice, tomatoes, potatoes, really
Gustavo, I gotta give you my wife's Ilocano empanadas. She's Chinese.
Yeah, I was about to say there's a restaurant. Oh my God, I think it's called Tabayak or something, but it's right next to my wife's restaurant at 4th Street Market in Santana. Really, it's just a little stall, but they make great pancit. They make great. What would they make? Like they made a double burrito, but for a while they had those big ass Ilocano empanadas, like orange tinted and all that. That just stopped selling them because people were going crazy over them. It was so good. Oh my God.
I was so happy like to have been seen, like, because like the best thing you can do to get the quickest way to people's hearts is food, and of course Filipino food is gonna make your heart explode. So like a tabaya, that means like you're gonna become a fat ass eating this. That's kind of like the thing. Taba means fat in the language.
Oh really? That's funny.
Yeah.
Let's
shout out your wife's restaurant again. Let's shout out your wife's restaurant.
Alta Baja Market. That's the name of the place.
You guys are talking food. My wife is cooking in the background. It smells really good. So I'm like, oh God, I'm like, oh, some of that later. I'm like, it's like it reminds me of like the cooking PR where they do the really good rices where they throw the little bits of like pork fat inside. the little pork fat. You throw it in and it melts. It's great.
Our version of chicken rice, I mean, some parts of the country, the Philippines, they do have like the Hainan chicken style rice with like you boil the rice with the chicken, and then you serve that with like the chicken broth. But we also have this porridge called arroz caldo,
Yeah.
rice
That's
soup, and then
good.
like you throw chicken in that. You put quail
Yeah.
eggs. I like I said, like what joins us as people is of course not just our dishes, because Mexican, Filipino, we traded a lot of like things. Because you have adobo, we have adobo, you have menudo, we have menudo. So there's a lot of cultural exchange there.
Gustavo, I understand this one, which is like, what's it? Si es Goya, tiene que ser bueno.
Nah.
We're talking about adobo. Like, by the way, I was going to ask you too. It's like, so like rice. Like now we're going to get into like with this. Is like this is a very I don't know if it's a very Cuban Puerto Rican thing, but like arroz con calamares. Have you guys had that? Squid rice?
Yes. I have not many times. Squid ink is really good when it comes to rice, but you don't really see that in Southern California restaurants.
It's very Spanish. You
Yeah,
get it in Spain and you get it in the Caribbean because you can get squid like really accessible and it's really kind of tasty on that. It's the same thing with like.
It's funny. A place that does sell it. The last time I had it, it was delicious. It was actually a Mexican seafood restaurant in New Orleans called Acamaya.
Because I think one of the things that people kind of like, and it's funny because people talk about like Mexican food being monolithic, and it's not that at all. Because effectively, like if you go to the more northern style, the norteño, lagunero, is going to be more towards what you get in the United States. But if you go to the Caribbean coast, it's going to be more like food in Puerto Rico and the Caribbean. Like you're going to get more plátanos, and you're getting like more seafood, and then like on the Pacific side, it's going to be a little bit more vinegary, right? Like if you go to Mexico City, or like you get like the more like it's a little bit more vinegar, a bit more mole kind of style.
Yeah,
a little bit more like if you're in New Mexico, that's kind of the stuff that you're going to get, right? It's a really kind of very interesting kind of like dynamic. The same thing with like Latin American food, right? It's like if I go like to the south, it's going to be more like Costa Rican food, right? I'll be getting like pasteles and like congri for breakfast. I don't know if you like have you been like in South America. One of the really funny things that like the first time I went there is like you go there, they got like arroz con habichuelas negras for breakfast, right? So we got congri, right?
Yeah,
rice with black beans and then tortillas and then like eggs and like meat. That's your breakfast. That's your breakfast food.
Man, I'd fall asleep after eating that.
Which is like it's like the first time I went to Costa Rica, I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. And it's the whole kind of, and you would have like a big thing instead of having oatmeal, it was like rice with black beans, congri, and you're like, okay, it's vegetables. So you're like, okay, that's your breakfast food.
That sounds so great, man. Gustavo, I did have this little question because of me bringing up like the rise of Vit Leong, like trying to be like now the face of the United Farm Workers. How does it feel as a Mexican American to see someone like Cesar Chavez get torn down? Although it's deserved because of the allegations, but how does it feel because he's someone that's been all over the history books. All of the streets here are named after Cesar Chavez. To see like someone that's like been seen as like a pillar of the community, how does that feel, man? Because like
it's bewildering. A lot of people still, especially because here's the thing: if you did not grow up with Cesar Chavez, so we're talking about people who are 30 and younger, they only know him as he was something for farm laborers, and so they don't know the impact of how many people thought of him as a hero while he was alive. He died in 1994. As I always say, I had no idea who he was, even though I was, I lived when he was still alive, and I was growing up at that time. But I was that middle generation because I remember seeing flyers about him. I just remember once I found out who he was, he's a really good guy and all of that. But here's the thing: when it comes to like who are Mexican American civil rights or civil rights heroes that are known, if at all, in the United States, he was really the only one. So to see like you're only one now just being a molester, what I've been trying to argue, it's like, yes, as someone who covered the Catholic Church sex abuse scandal, having seen the evidence, having read the stories, I do believe the survivors. Absolutely. I do believe that we must reckon with that. But to all of a sudden say, "Oh, Cesar did nothing good in his career," that's a lie. That's a lie. I think that
Yeah,
I think if anything, it adds just to the ultimate tragedy of who the man was. He started off doing really good, and he just ended up doing really, really bad things. First, I think it was Larry who left first, the United Farm Workers. Then Philip Vera Cruz was purged in the early 1980s.
yeah,
And the history of the Manongs and how they started the grape strike, that was kind of suppressed. But the years have changed. The years have like brought in more, and Dolores Huerta definitely came around to all this. But there's still his murals. His murals are still up. Their street names
yeah.
are still up. Like we will not know at the end how we remember this for years to come. It's history as it's being written.
I mean, I think it comes down to like people are complex, right? And I'm not going to defend. I'm not defend. I want to be clear. I'm not defending the allegations. I am not distrusting the people who said it, because as you said, like when you have typically the thing with this is like this kind of thing for me is like, is there a preponderance of evidence, and there seems to be preponderance of evidence here, but you separate the good from the bad, and I think like essentially the things that they you do good things, you do bad things. I think that like the idea of the figure, well, I mean that gets a lot more complicated, but I think like the work and the good that you do is kind of like important. I mean, again, this is not the only case. You can get the whole thing with like civil rights leaders in other fronts, right? Where like, I mean, we could get into a whole thing with Gandhi, for example, right? If we wanted to like,
You could talk about Martin Luther King being a playboy.
I mean, but again, I'm not making this.
Yeah.
I don't want to make the whataboutism thing. I do want to say that like effectively the work is still like laudable, and there's good and there's bad. And what you do is you say, okay, I mean, you separate it out, because again, like it's as with everything, like the Ben Franklin being a playboy kind of affect my read on him. Well, not necessarily it's applicable, but like I mean, it's the things that like you have to kind of like put that into context, right? And I don't want to minimize kind of like the pain of anybody, but I don't want to again, you don't throw out the good with the bad, basically.
Gustavo, I got this question for you, man. This is coming from that we usually have a third stooge with us. Of course I'm Larry. Arturo's our Curly, and this is a question from our champ BJ Bethel, who is he's a journalist also, over in Ohio. He had this question for you. Okay. What are the lingering effects of NAFTA on Mexican agriculture?
Oh my
While
God.
we Americans lost the auto industry, they lost a ton of the business for agriculture. How's that affected the farm business in California and immigration?
Well, NAFTA led to a huge increase in migration, because what happened was, yes, you had all these American jobs being lost. They get sent down, the manufacturing jobs get sent down to Mexico. The agriculture, all of a sudden, cheap corn imports start going into Mexico. So farmers lose their farms and they move into these cities to work at these cheap factories. But capital is always going to look for the cheapest possible option. So after a certain while, these companies then start moving out to, take your pick, Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Philippines for that matter. And so now you have a bunch of people without work. Americans, they're never going to migrate anywhere because they have this idea that they have to stay in their homeland forever, which is weird. That's not how most of the rest of the world is. Most of the rest of the world is like, well, if I can't get a job here, let me take my fortune somewhere else. And so that's why you had millions of Mexicans coming into this country, whether legally or illegally. That's what NAFTA's ultimate legacy is. Loss of jobs everywhere, and migration everywhere as well.
His second question was, he also had a second question. Sorry, go ahead.
Arturo wants to say something.
I was going to say something like we're talking about the election, and I do think that one thing that was never figured, the only person who was talking about NAFTA is the one who won, right? In the last election.
It's insane because forever it was the left and the super far right that was criticizing NAFTA. And then the Republicans, like for a lot of what they were saying was what I heard growing up among progressives for a long time, like this critique of globalism, this critique, it was masterful. It was absolutely masterful. And a lot of people, and I mean, it was basically the same stuff that Bernie Sanders was saying, except Trump and Vance, they also put nationalistic, jingoistic terms to it, which was able to soak up a bunch of voters that way. And the Democrats, they just had no answer to it whatsoever. It was
well, I mean, they don't want to. I mean, like, I'll say that, like, to me, and I was against that at the time, and nothing I've seen over the last 30 years has led me to believe that I was wrong at the time, that it was the wrong. I mean, I worked in manufacturing, so, like, to me, it was like, I knew it was bad. I knew it was a terrible idea, and nothing has proven that I was wrong about it. So we can have a long conversation around it, but I think that's kind of like one of the key points is, like, yeah, we haven't reckoned with this idea that, like, hey, you know, what happens is, like, you can't just build the economy around people who are millionaires, because you need to, like, have jobs, right? And that's kind of something people have reckoned with. But I'll leave it so that we can get to the next BJ question.
Yeah, so BJ had a question. I kind of like answered it a little bit, but I wanted your take on it. We've seen the mainstream media sort of like go away from featuring ICE for sort of taking over towns and gathering people up. In your view, has there really been a slowdown in these abductions by ICE and these arrests and these, you know, people being taken into the paddy wagons? Has that something that's stopped, or is it just something that's not covered in the news anymore? As
that the what is not happening. And Tom Homan, the border czar for Trump, he has said it, that the deportations are going to continue, but you're just not going to see them as flashy as they were, because the Trump administration realized that was disastrous for their for Latinos. You know, it just turned off so many people. These just straight up pogroms. There's no other way to describe them. But the deportations have never stopped. They're getting them in the courthouses. They're like trying to choke these undocumented immigrants and even people with some standing. They're trying to choke them out of this country. They're now, like, they just announced yesterday that if you have a final deportation order, in other words, if a judge has already ruled you got to leave, you got to leave this country effective immediately, and you refuse to, they're going to stick you with an $18,000 fine. They just, I haven't read the full story, but I saw that the Homeland Security is saying now that if you are applying for a green card, historically, you could say in this country while it was being agitated, nope. Now, if you want to get a green card, you have to go back to your home country. So they're doing everything and anything possible, and the media hasn't stopped reporting on this. My colleagues at the LA Times have not stopped reporting on this. It's just that it's not as flashy and as easily visually offensive as it was for most of last year.
I mean, I think one of the things that, like, and this is kind of a bit unpopular, and I say this because it's happening in the community. Puerto Rico's happening to the Dominican, was kind of like voted for one thing, were promised one thing, and are being kind of victimized by ICE and that. And what I say is, you know, we fall asleep at the wheel as a community because when we don't force politicians to put in legal protections, right? And what I mean by that is the system is, I don't agree with the system, but the system that's in place is a system that allows for this, right? And one of the ways you do this is by, you know, a lot of the thing that the people in power are kind of taking advantage of is, like, we are a country that, like, rather than putting things on writing, we rely on these norms. The problem with norms is that norms don't protect you when somebody decides to execute the full extent of the law, right? And we need to be more conscious and more active and start thinking about how do we put these protections in place. And obviously, you want to deal with one problem, but I mean, I think we also need to hold, kind of like when you get the politician that, like, is supposed to defend you, they need to put in the law to defend the thing, right? It's like, I raised the example of, like, the Roe v. Wade thing. If you did not codify into law, right, then you had the opportunity to do so. The fact that, like, at a certain point they overturned the decision because it wasn't a law is on you because you didn't go off and do that, right? So you have to kind of, like, attack this from multiple sides. And I think that, like, at a local level and, like, at, like, different levels, we have to be more active at, like, getting the stuff kind of, like, written down, protections, because, again, we talked about things like Operation Wetback. We talked about things like that have happened over history where, like, again, within the laws that are written, that wasn't, like, as I said, it's a birthright citizenship for Puerto Ricans could be revealed, right? Because it's not constant. Like, if you think it is, it's always been, it's settled law. It's not. I mean, like, if you read the case law, the case law says this, and like it's only being supported because they passed this law that can be overturned. So you need to put in strong protections, right? And I think there's obviously, I mean, like there's different things, but you need to like, and also if you loosen restrictions about like things that the government can do under the war on terror, don't be surprised when that gets used and weaponized for like when you're rounding up like people who are in the country illegally, right? And again, I want to kind of emphasize that I'm talking specifically about how the law is written, not about like the justice or ethical side of it, right? And I think that's something that like people kind of like need to keep this in mind, right? You need, if you take away these protections, or you take away like you add these powers to the government, then don't be surprised when these powers are abused. And you need to kind of like step back and think: do we really need these powers added to the executive, or like to the, and think about what that actually means, right? Like if you give somebody mace, don't be surprised if they mace you in the eye, right? That's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I think this is why we're like, you have to like think about like, again, like both parties are really good at weapons lawyering, right? Like and just basically like using the law to the fullest extent. So you need to kind of like start thinking about it, because again, I was reading about some case about somebody who it was this I think it was a medical student in Florida. And the parents brought her into a country, and she never got citizenship. And so, effectively, within how the law is defined, right? You know, there was the law allowed for her to be deported, right? Because that's kind of the way the law is written. And should there have been a path for her to get her? Yes, there should have been, right? But nobody put that in place, because the whole, the whole Dreamers program and conscientious, and then like the governments that have been in place, like even Obama didn't put in a path for these people to become citizenship. We should have, right? And that's the kind of thing we need to start thinking about and doing, because eventually you're going to pay for not doing it, right? Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Yeah, makes perfect sense. I've always like I always love these Larry Leon quotes, because like one of my favorite quotes he has is like, they say, oh, now I'm about to use the Philippine accent, but I'm not going to do that. They say we are all equal in rights and justice. We must make sure of it. It is not simply handed to us. Like, and for us as, as colored people, as people who are children of immigrants, we do have to fight for our rights. We have to stand up for ourselves. And that's how I was raised by my mom, simply going to the school and saying, we speak English. We were never raised to just be quiet and just like sort of like just accept things as they are. It's always been something like, if you feel like you're wrong, then do something.
Yeah, I mean,
and as a union person, as a union man, and my mom and dad were also union people, I was kind of raised like, you have rights and you should fight for them. You should get everything that you can, because you only live this life one time, and we should be afforded these same, we should be afforded these things like healthcare, like decent pay, like time off. This is things that we fight for, and to be treated like we're human beings is very important in this fight, not just in immigration, but also in work and in labor and in so many other things.
And I'll say, I'll give this example to people who obviously may not be aware of the Puerto Rican situation. And I'll say this: is like our government defaulted on their loans, right? And most municipalities and cities and states, when they default on that, they give a bailout package, right? Somebody comes in, they bail them out, and you go ahead and do that. And what ended up happening for us is they came in and put in a colonial board. They put in a board that basically runs the government, because they said, oh, we don't trust you. So rather than like bail you out, we're going to put an oversight board and reduce your sovereignty, right? So again, like, don't take the things that, like, the rights that you have is given, because hey, you can lose them very quickly if you're not really careful, right? And that's kind of, again, I mentioned like that's why there's been an uptick, and like that's why that one is probably like part of what it is, because like he looks at it and goes like, well, that kind of sucks. I don't want that happening to the country, and again, or my people, and you want to kind of like, again, you want to watch out, you want to like sit there and understand what's going on. Yeah.
Gustavo, I have these last three questions, because I know we're desperately out of time. That's what Tony Schiavone would say. We have these 3 questions for you. My first question I ask everybody: what is your favorite dessert?
I think the greatest dessert is halo halo. I really mean that. It's incredible. My favorite, though, I mean, I would have to go with the tie between Reese's Pieces and Reese's Peanut Butter Cups.
Hey, man, I love
peanut
butter and chocolate, man.
I love Reese's. Reese's are awesome.
That's what I go for again and again. You know, halo halo's harder to get. Otherwise, I'd say halo halo. So I can't say it's favorite, but I do think it's the greatest dessert of all, just because it's like for all its different things, and I mean it.
Gustavo, if you ever find your way out here, or we should meet up sometime. I can take you to these places. I should also take you to dim sum to go yamcha with me and my. I'll take you to a place. I'm sure it'll like make you like. And this is the other question is, if people wanted to find you, where can they find you? Also, one more plug for your wife's restaurant.
Yeah, Alta Baja Market. Nowadays, social media, I really barely use. I only use it professionally. But if you really want to follow what I do, just subscribe to my newsletter. It comes out every Saturday morning. Go to GustavoArellano.org, and it's free. It's a free newsletter. I gather everything I've written in the previous week, any upcoming events, do different plugs here and there. So that's where it would be, GustavoArellano.org.
I am a subscriber. I've been a subscriber for the last 5 years, actually.
Thank you. I love it. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so me just meeting you, it all just felt so kino, man. It's been a pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
And the last question I asked everybody, because it shows me what character you have.
Yeah.
If there's a rainbow that came over the sky with a message from Gustavo Arellano, what's that gonna say?
Oh my God. Be nice, I guess. I mean, no, I be nice. Yes, I want people to be nice, but it would just be that old journalism message: comfort the afflicted, afflict the comfortable. Like, take care of people who need to be taken care of, and don't trust people in power or people who mistreat people. I don't like bullies, and so that's what I would say: comfort the afflicted, afflict the comfortable.
I love it. That's really cool.
Absolutely, man. Again, subscribe to Gustavo's newsletter. Go to his wife's restaurant,
Alta Baja Market.
Alta Baja Market, and we always love talking to local businesses, local people here. Talking to another Southern California man from the OC, and I am just feel really happy to have met you the way I did, and I definitely want to talk again if that's ever going to be a possibility, because this has been one of our best, tremendous talks here. Again, how often can a pro wrestling podcast say they had someone who was part of a Pulitzer Prize winning team in journalism?
So none have asked me before, so you folks are the first one, and I'm happy to come on anytime. You just let me know when.
Oh yeah, thank you so much, Gustavo, and like honestly, keep doing what you're doing. I believe in you, or like the work that you do. It's really important, and me and Arturo are just happy to have you here.
Well, thank you guys.
This was really great, guys.
And as I say all the time, because I quote one Mr. Cold School, see you next time.